Hello, everyone. Today is Wednesday, March 3rd, and this is the Cluster API office hours. Hope you're all having a good week so far. I would just like to remind you, or if you're new to the meeting, we have a meeting etiquette, so please make sure you follow it. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand using the raise hand feature on Zoom. And if you want to bring up anything in this meeting, please add it to the agenda. It's right here. I'll make sure to watch the participant list so I can call on you if you raise your hand. So we'd like to start with a few PSAs today. So the first one is that the Cluster API main branch is now using Go 1.16. So if you are developing on the main branch, make sure that you update your Go version locally. The controller runtime version has also been updated to 0.9. That has not been released yet, but if you are a provider using the main branch daily or nightly builds, that will come to you pretty soon. And also, we also have the Kubernetes version that got dependency got updated to 1.21, also not released. So that should only affect infra providers developing on main branch. And yeah, I think that's it. And there's a question in chat about Cluster API uses Go bin data. Should we switch to the new Go 1.16 embedded feature? And Vince says yes. And I assume that's not done yet. Vince, did you want to comment on that?
No, we need to get around that. But yeah, like Huge Plus wanted to remove Go bin data so that we can remove those generated files because Go will do that at compile time.
Awesome, cool. Looking forward to that change. Any questions on those dependency updates? Cool. Fabrizio, you want to take the next few?
Yeah, thank you. So first one, the PR for using Cert Manager 1.1.0 on the 0.3 branch is managed. No change are required from the provider side because the Cert Manager handles conversion. And the second one is that yesterday CDF reported a problem on KCP remediation when the node name or the TCD name was different than the machine name. And this happens, for instance, for AWS. The bug is already fixed both on master and on the 0.3 branch. But I think that it's important that everyone is aware. Maybe someone is testing the KCP remediation now. So,
any questions for Fabrizio on those two? So just to clarify, it's which releases are affected?
Oh, for the 0.3 branch, I guess starting from 0.3.13, which is the first one with KCP remediation. I can check it and okay, add it to the note.
Okay. But it's not a regression. It was always broken for KCP remediation when it was added. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Sada, for finding that and fixing it. All right. I don't see any hands raised, so we're gonna keep moving. Let's move on to discussion topics. We have folks from Ignition wanting to tell us, oh, actually Flatcar and Ignition support. I don't know who wants to take that.
Sure. We'll start off. I'll put it on the agenda, largely just because it's been something that I've worked with and through a few folks on for a while now. So it's now at this point, rather than just having had a discussion topics over the last 6 months or so, we have now got PRs opened. Matthias is on this call also, has PRs open for both Cluster API, and then we're working our way into some of the providers, but particularly the one that last we spoke with Nadir and otherwise, a way to handle ignition as well as secrets, and we discussed whether or not to make it a KEP. So in the cluster API pull request 4172, I'll paste it in the chat here. Yeah, you have a link. So this is the one that is about ignition. Mateusz can go through more details, but it's effectively working through the bootstrap provider so that any kind of conversions that need to happen from ignition or otherwise happen there. It also avoids some of the secrets handoff that was a point of contention also with the other pull request. But it's getting actually a fair amount of reviewers at this point, so I'm not worried about that. There's been no major pushbacks or otherwise. This is just kind of like raising it to attention that since we've started working on it, even folks that are not using Flatcar and otherwise that are interested in cluster API support and ignition have jumped in. So it's actually gotten a lot of really nice productive feedback, and otherwise iterating. This is just raising it up. If anybody has questions on implementation or choices that we made that aren't so architecturally changed, so architecturally fundamentally different to need a full CAEP process. If anybody has familiarity with the issue and wants to talk about that now, or otherwise, just here's a pointer to the conversation.
Awesome. Who has any questions or any comments? All right, Marcel.
Yeah, hi. Just really quickly, I reviewed this pull request as well, and I looked at several of the pull requests with Mateusz, and we talked about it also separately. The thing that's still a little bit unclear to me, and maybe more a question towards the VMware folk in this call, would be like there's a cap at machine ADM bootstrapper proposal, which I also reviewed, and I think, I don't know if the person that created it is in here, but I would like to know if there was any more thought put into this now, also with the open pull request from Mateusz, because in my opinion, they kind of have the similar concerns of using ignition. I'm fine with going for either solution. I'm just curious if there was more discussion.
Yeah, Yassine, you want to answer that?
Yeah, so there's some overlap between the two, but the new bootstrapper doesn't only solve this. There are two things that it does. It abstracts first what OS bootstrapper are you gonna use, whether ignition or cloud init, and it relies only on a specific subset that is implemented by both, which is like placing files into the right locations, and it hands out to cluster API the bootstrapping process. There's also a part where basically it helps configure some of the operating system bits, such as sysctl and other OS level configurations. At least that's for the bootstrapping part.
Thanks, Yassine. I actually had the same question as you, Marcel, and the way I see it, and let me know if I'm wrong, Yassine and Nadir, but this PR adds support to the current kubeADM bootstrap provider for ignition. So it modifies the kubeADM bootstrap provider to support ignition, whereas this proposal is proposing a whole new bootstrap provider on that kind of supersedes kubeADM bootstrap provider. But for now, they'll live alongside each other. And that new bootstrap provider allows to solve other problems that we've had, like securing the bootstrap secrets. But I think we want both to support ignition, because if we do eventually remove kubeADM bootstrap provider, we want the new one to also have ignition in mind. Does that make sense? Nadir, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, that's precisely it. It's another issue is some of the hackiness we have around secrets pulling in is not great in Cloud Init, and it's broken a number of times as Canonical have rightly made changes to Cloud Init, which we are using it in unexpected ways. And that's led to breaking changes in Ubuntu that have then had to be hotfixed and feature flagged to reproduce the older behavior that we rely on. So we need to move away from that. And it's precisely that whatever we move to has to support Ignition and Cloud Init, that we don't end ourselves in the same situation where we only support one or the other. I'm quite happy for us. If everyone is happy with making those changes to the current Bootstrap provided support Ignition, then we should proceed with that, because I think the machine ADM Bootstrap is going to be a long-term process of migrating. We're not going to support. We may like supporting control planes is something we haven't considered yet, and we might have to do that in a future release anyway. So we don't expect everyone to move over to machine ADM on like day one v1 alpha 4 anyway.
Okay, it makes sense to me, and I understand the reasoning. Why I'm asking is, especially out of the machine ADM bootstrapper cap, this didn't really get clear to me. So it would be really nice if we could like add a little bit more meat to the cap to kind of explain the reasoning, because I also reviewed it, and it's a little bit rough around the edges still, in my opinion. So that would be nice. Cool, thank you.
Thanks for bringing this up. Any other questions from anyone?
No, that was very productive. And I mean, basically on our side is like, we got the feeling from the reviews that are happening, and, you know, it's kind of fun to see it become a party of like 9 reviewers tagged for it. But so far we hadn't had any major pushback. So learning about its development in parallel with kind of the broader machine ADM conversation is good, and we can get around that, you know, making sure that the Ignition support is ironed out once that's in the works as well. So that's great. So yeah, just escalating it for attention. It's good. Thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, let's move on to the next topic. And actually, Marcel, you want to tell us about your experience with focusing on CAPI? I'm very curious to hear this.
Yeah, so I kind of want to make this more a PSA, because we're just getting started. As you know, I've been in this sync now for 2 months roughly, or maybe more. Time flies. And we are now in Giant Swarm focusing more heavily on Cluster API, to the extent that we have now started like a month-long internal hackathon of sorts, where around 25 developers are now focusing purely on Cluster API and switching us to Cluster API. Why I want to make this PSA a little bit here is for maintainers, not only of Cluster API, like the main repository, but also the providers, to be aware that there might be more pull requests coming up in the near future. I know, Cecile, you have already spoken to, for example, Nicola or some other people from our side that are working on Azure, and that's going to intensify in the next month, as we are now on a broader scale getting into it and adopting Cluster API controllers, so not only the types. And I just wanted to raise a little bit of awareness that this might happen, and in case there are any problems, unclear, whatever, feel free to ping and we can sort it out.
Sounds great. We love PRs. I misunderstood. I thought this was going to be more of a retrospective and not a PSA, but I look forward to the retrospective once we're there.
Yeah, we're just getting started in a broader scale. So it's currently, 25 people starting out, like 25 developers now working on it.
Awesome. Welcome. Any questions from Giant Swarm or any thoughts?
There's lots of thoughts, but they're not refined enough to bring this here. Like we are hitting a whole bunch of issues on several levels, so some of which we can solve in a short amount of time, and some of which will obviously take quite a bit longer. Yeah, roughly around like PKI is like probably our biggest headache right now, because we use Vault and obviously our root CAs are then in Vault. But that doesn't quite mesh with how Cluster API works right now. But all of that is, in my opinion, now technical detail, and we will get into that more deeply.
Any questions from anyone else in the audience for Marcel? No? All right, pretty self-explanatory. So, all right, I think this is the last topic. So unless anyone has any last minute topic that they want to squeeze in, and if so, please raise your hand so I can know. But I think this will be a shorter meeting. All right. No hands raising. I'm going to call it. Thank you, everyone, and see you all next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day.